The morning my husband died, I called my mom, barely able to speak through the sobs. She said, "Can this wait? We're celebrating Jessica's birthday." That night, I held our 8-year-old daughter in silence. No one came. But 2 weeks later, they showed up with a pen, a document, and a plan to take everything he left us. If you've ever been betrayed by the people who are supposed to protect you, stay. Because this isn't just a story about grief, it's about boundaries, resilience. And the moment the will was read, that changed everything. The phone call came at 10:47 a.m. Anna was slicing strawberries for her daughter Emma's school lunch when the screen lit up with Michael's assistant's name. Amanda rarely called, never during the workday. The tremble in her voice was immediate. "Anna," she choked out. Michael collapsed during a client meeting. "Paramedics are here. They're taking him to St. Luke's." Anna didn't remember dropping the knife, only the ringing sound as it hit the floor. Her hands trembled violently as she snatched her keys and ran out the door. The drive was a blur of red lights and whispered prayers. But she was too late. Michael Blake, age 39, husband, father, and the calm center of her world, had died of a massive heart attack at 11:23 a.m. He had kissed her and Emma goodbye that morning with syrup on his lips and a crooked smile, promising to be back early for Emma's art showcase. He told Anna, half joking, "Don't forget the real maple syrup this time, not that corn syrup junk." And now he was gone. In the small, sterile room where they let her see his body, Anna sat in silence. Michael looked almost peaceful, almost asleep, except for the unnatural stillness in his chest. She touched his cheek, still warm, her body folded in on itself, quiet and crumbling. Afterward, with the kind of automatic reflex that grief demands, she began the calls. The list of must-inform names ran through her head like a script. Michael's brother Ethan, their neighbor Susan, who picked up Emma from school, and then her parents. She sat in the parking lot of the hospital, staring at the phone in her lap, her thumb hovering over the contact labeled Mom and Dad. She didn't want to make the call, but it had to be done. The phone rang 5 times before her mother answered, her voice bright with laughter and background noise. "Anna, can I call you back in a bit? We're in the middle of Jessica's birthday dinner." Anna blinked. "Mom?" Her voice broke. "Michael's dead." There was a pause. Not silence, music and laughter still buzzed behind her mother's voice, but a brief hiccup in the flow of celebration. "Oh my goodness, are you sure?" her mother asked. "I saw his body," Anna whispered. "They said it was a heart attack this morning." Her mother sighed, not in shock, in annoyance. "Well, this is quite a lot. But sweetie, Jessica's turning 40. We've got the caterers, and everyone's here. Can this wait until tomorrow?" Anna didn't answer. Her throat was raw, not from screaming, but from swallowing every word she wanted to scream. A rustling, then her father came on the line. "Anna, this is awful," was Michael's life insurance current. "You should contact the company first thing. Not, 'We're coming,' not, 'How are you and Emma?' Not even, 'I'm so sorry,' just, 'insurance.'" She hung up without saying goodbye. That night the house was too quiet. The walls echoed with the absence of Michael's laughter, his humming while folding laundry, the sound of his footsteps heading down the stairs after checking on Emma. 8-year-old Emma crawled into her mother's bed, clutching one of her father's unwashed t-shirts. She had only asked one question when Anna picked her up from school. "Where's Daddy?" Anna had pulled over to the side of the road, turned to face her daughter, and said through sobs, "Sweetheart." Daddy's heart stopped working today. Emma had gone very still. Then she asked, "Is he coming back tomorrow?" When Anna shook her head, "No." Emma's scream came from someplace primal, someplace no child should have to touch. "I want Daddy," she wailed, curling into Anna's arms. Now, in the stillness of their bedroom, Anna held her daughter tightly. She hadn't turned on the lights. Grief didn't want light. Outside, the street was quiet. Inside, Anna whispered stories about Michael, how he made dinosaur-shaped pancakes every Saturday, how he once cried watching Emma sing in her school play, how every decision he made was guided by love, by family. She wanted her parents, Even after all the emotional distance, she had imagined that losing a son-in-law so suddenly would pierce their self-involvement. But even in death, Michael was not a priority. Jessica's birthday was. Anna could still hear the music from the background of that call, the clinking of wine glasses, her mother's tone, that brittle balance of inconvenience and obligation. It wasn't just abandonment, it was betrayal. She glanced over at Emma's sleeping face, tear-streaked but peaceful now in slumber. Anna tucked a strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, though her voice shook. "I don't know how yet, but we will." Outside, a wind picked up, rustling the trees. Anna sat up in bed and looked out the window. The world was still turning. But for her, for Emma, everything had changed. The doorbell rang again that night, another casserole, another neighbor with sympathetic eyes and a voice softened by pity. Susan, their next-door neighbor, brought over a warm dish wrapped in foil and gently placed her hand on Anna's shoulder. "You don't have to say anything," she said. "Just, we're thinking of you." It was the third time someone from the neighborhood had shown up that day. Michael's college roommate had called. Her boss at the architecture firm emailed to say, "Take all the time you need." Even her high school friend Rachel, who she hadn't spoken to in over a decade, left a voicemail with teary condolences. But from her own parents, nothing more than that single cold call. Not even a follow-up text. It was easier to accept indifference from the world, but not from the people who raised you. Anna stood at the kitchen window after Susan left, arms folded over herself, as if to hold something in grief maybe, or anger. The house was dim. She had turned off the lights after tucking Emma in again, exhausted by the child's repeated wake-ups. Every time she drifted off, Emma would jerk awake with a cry, "Mommy, is Daddy here yet?" Anna could only whisper, "No, baby," and hold her tighter. Earlier that evening, after Emma's third nightmare, she had asked it the question Anna had been dreading. Why didn't Grandma and Grandpa come today? The air in the room felt heavier in that moment. Anna hadn't known how to answer. She didn't want to lie to her daughter. But how do you tell an 8-year-old that her grandparents chose a birthday cake and champagne over her father's funeral? "They were busy," she had said quietly, immediately hating the words. She sounded like them. Emma blinked wide-eyed. "But Daddy's not coming back. That's more important than cake." Anna had nodded, trying not to cry. "Yes, you're right." Later, alone with a cup of untouched tea growing cold in her hands, Anna's mind went somewhere she rarely allowed it to go, back to childhood. Back to Jessica. Jessica, her older sister by 3 years, had always been the golden one, the louder one, the one who demanded and received. Anna was the quiet child, the helper, the girl who knew how to read a room and disappear when needed. She remembered her 6th birthday, how she had saved up for months to buy herself a pair of sparkly shoes she'd seen in the window of Murphy's. Jessica had thrown a tantrum that morning over not getting her way, and by the time dinner rolled around, their parents were so flustered that Anna's birthday cake was forgotten altogether. When she cried in her room that night, her mother had said, "Don't be dramatic. It was just a cake." At Christmas, Anna always got practical gifts: socks, books, a new backpack. Jessica got art supplies, paint sets, a dance costume that cost more than both of Anna's gifts combined. "You don't mind, do you?" her mom once said. "Jessica's just more sensitive." Anna had grown up learning how to require less. Michael had once told her during one of their long nighttime talks, "You always think you're asking for too much, even when it's just the bare minimum." And now, in the wake of his death, her parents hadn't even shown up. Their absence screamed louder than any condolences. They had always taught her that family is everything, but they had never shown her how to be family. The tears came again, slow and quiet. Not sobs, just the leaking kind born of exhaustion and disappointment, the kind that make you question everything you were taught to believe. A buzz from her phone lit up the counter. A message from Jessica. "Sorry I didn't say anything earlier. Mom told me you were being a bit dramatic today. Just try to keep it together for Emma." Anna stared at the screen. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, then stopped. What was the point? For Jessica, everything had always been measured through the lens of performance. Grief wasn't real unless it was manageable, acceptable, digestible. Michael had hated that about her family. They don't get you, he'd once said. They don't deserve to. And yet here Anna was still hoping for a message, a gesture, something, some glimmer of decency. She went back to Emma's room. Her daughter had fallen into deeper sleep now, wrapped in the oversized t-shirt that still smelled faintly like Michael. Anna sat at the edge of the bed, brushing a lock of hair from Emma's face. "We'll rewrite what family means," she whispered. Emma stirred slightly but didn't wake. Anna stood, walked into the hallway, and paused in front of the family photo wall. She reached up and removed the framed photo of her parents holding Emma at her 3rd birthday. The smiles had always looked stiff, performative. She tucked it away in a drawer. From now on, she thought presence matters more than blood. The day of the funeral dawned far too bright. Anna stood by the bedroom window, watching the sunlight stretch across the lawn, as if nothing had happened, as if the world hadn't tilted and swallowed her whole just 4 days earlier. She didn't remember much of the week between Michael's death and this morning, only fragments. Forms to sign, a black dress to find, helping Emma write a note to tuck into her father's pocket. Now it was Saturday and the house was too quiet. Emma tugged on the hem of her dress, a soft sky blue one that Michael had always said made her look like a princess. She had insisted on wearing it. "Daddy liked me in blue," she'd whispered that morning. Anna had braided a small section of her hair just the way Michael used to do before recitals or picture day. By the time they arrived at the funeral home, guests had already begun to gather. Anna stood near the entrance, offering tired hugs and hollow smiles. Michael's colleagues from the firm arrived first, all in dark suits, many of them openly crying. They shared stories with Emma one after another, kneeling to her level, offering small memories of her father, how he kept photos of her on his desk, how he bragged about her soccer skills even though he didn't understand the rules of the game. They made time for her. They showed up. Her own parents were nowhere to be seen. Anna checked her phone. A text from her mother had arrived 20 minutes ago. "Stuck in traffic. Jessica's having trouble finding something appropriate to wear. Save us seats in the front. Save them seats." Anna looked at the pew she had marked with a reserved sign. It sat empty conspicuously, so while the rest of the room filled with people who had rearranged flights, cleared schedules, and shown up early to grieve a man they'd loved. At 10:57 a.m., 3 minutes before the service was set to begin, the double doors creaked open. Anna didn't have to turn to know it was them. She heard the whisper of her mother's perfume before the click of her heels. Jessica's voice was low, annoyed. "Seriously? No one told me we'd be indoors. I wouldn't have worn suede." They slid into the front row with just enough noise to turn heads. Jessica gave Anna a quick, perfunctory hug. "Sorry," she mumbled, already pulling out her phone. Her thumbs moved quickly, screen lighting up her face. She didn't look up again. Anna sat 2 rows back, next to Emma and Michael's younger brother, Ethan. Ethan had landed less than 12 hours ago, coming straight from a flight that had started in Osaka, connected through Dubai, then New York. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hair still smelled faintly of the plane's stale air, but he had made it. When Emma saw him at the door that morning, she had run to him and wrapped her arms around his waist. He hadn't let go since. Now, during the service, he held her hand gently but firmly, as if anchoring her to something solid. Anna hadn't seen him cry yet, but his silence felt heavier than most people's wailing. As the minister stood to speak, Anna felt her own legs growing heavier. She had agreed to deliver the eulogy. She'd written it in the middle of the night, surrounded by Michael's shirts and his empty side of the bed, rewriting each sentence over and over again until it sounded almost like her real voice. Now, it was time. She stood slowly, legs shaking, notes trembling in her hand. She could barely see through the blur in her vision, but when she caught sight of Emma's small frame sitting beside Ethan, something inside her steadied. She began. Michael Blake was the kind of man who bought 3 types of maple syrup because he couldn't decide which one was most authentic. A soft chuckle rippled through the room. He was the man who took half-days just to make dinosaur pancakes for Emma's class. He hated cilantro and bad coffee, but loved crossword puzzles and yard sales. He was our home. She paused, her voice cracking. Most of all, Michael always put family first. As the words left her mouth, her gaze drifted to her parents. Her mother was dabbing dry eyes with a tissue. Jessica was still scrolling now with her screen dimmed to hide the glow. And her father was gathering his coat. They were preparing to leave. Already. Anna's chest tightened. The words in her throat vanished. She looked back to Emma, whose eyes were locked on her with unwavering trust. For her daughter, she found her voice again and finished the eulogy. Even if the weight of those last words, "Michael always put family first," felt like salt in a fresh wound. The reception afterward was held at their home. Kevin's friends helped carry in food, set up chairs in the backyard, and made sure every guest was offered something to drink. Ethan helped Emma sort through her memory box. Susan cleaned dishes without being asked. Anna's parents and Jessica sat stiffly in the living room, accepting condolences as if they were the bereaved. But they didn't offer to help. They didn't check on Emma. They didn't ask how Anna was coping. And by the time the sun began to set, they were gone. No goodbye, no offer to stay the night. No, "We'll be here if you need anything." Just silence. That night, after the last guest had left and Ethan was settling Emma into bed, Anna stood in the kitchen and stared at the spot where Michael used to stand, his favorite mug, still on the shelf, untouched. She realized something then, something she'd known for years, but never let herself say out loud. Blood doesn't make someone family. Showing up does. 2 weeks had passed since the funeral, and the silence from her parents was almost comforting, until the doorbell rang. Anna was sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of unopened mail and a notepad filled with phone numbers she hadn't yet called insurance benefits the bank. Emma was at school for her first full week back. The house, though quiet, still felt like it was holding its breath. She peeked through the peephole. Her father stood stiffly on the porch, adjusting the collar of his golf shirt. Her mother checked her lipstick in a compact mirror, frowning at her reflection. Anna opened the door slowly. "I didn't know you were coming," she said, stepping aside out of politeness more than invitation. "We thought we'd check in," her mother said, breezing past her. "See how you and Emma are doing." "Is she at school?" her father asked. "Good. Then we can speak openly." The words landed like a cold draft. They made themselves comfortable in the living room while Anna, out of instinct more than hospitality, put the kettle on. Her body moved on autopilot. Fill the pot, turn the knob, reach for the mugs. The same ones Michael used every morning. She set the tea down on coasters, sat on the edge of the armchair across from them, and waited. "How's Emma adjusting?" her mother asked, taking a sip. "She's coping," Anna said. "She cries less at night now, but she's quiet. And she asks about Michael all the time." Her mother gave a nod that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Children are resilient." Anna said nothing. Her father cleared his throat and leaned forward, placing his cup down with deliberate precision. "Anna, we wanted to talk to you about your situation." "My situation?" she echoed. "Your financial situation," her mother clarified. Anna stared at them, unsure if she was hearing correctly. "Michael made sure we're okay. He had things in order." Her father gave a thin-lipped smile. "Yes, well, that's what we wanted to discuss." He shifted in his seat, now fully in presentation mode. "Your mother and I are nearing retirement. Our investments took a hit during the last market downturn. And with healthcare being what it is..." Anna's stomach tightened. "Are you asking me for money?" she said flatly. Her mother's eyes darted away, but her father kept his gaze steady. "We just believe that given Michael's position at the firm and the life insurance, you're in a unique position to help. After all, we are your parents. How much are you asking for?" He brightened, as if relieved to skip to the numbers. "We thought a 50% share of the insurance payout would be fair. That would secure our retirement. And an additional 15% could go to help your sister. Jessica has struggled financially. Her art career hasn't been easy." Anna blinked. "You want 65% of the money meant to support me and Emma after Michael's death?" Her mother opened her mouth, but Anna cut her off. "No, wait. Let me make sure I understand. The same parents who showed up late to the funeral, who left before the last guest, who haven't checked in on Emma once since he died, want 2/3 of the only security Michael left behind?" Her father's tone cooled. "We're not trying to be opportunistic, Anna. This is about family, helping each other." Anna's voice dropped. When did you ever help Michael? Or Emma? Her mother frowned. We came to the funeral. We sat with you. We offered our support. You sat like strangers and left like you were bored. Her father leaned back, voice sharpening. We paid for your college. We helped with your first house. That counts for something. You don't get a lifetime of compensation for doing the bare minimum as parents. The room grew tense. Then came the voice from the hallway. Mom. Emma's voice was quiet. Too quiet. Anna turned. Emma stood at the edge of the staircase, still in her school uniform. A beat passed before Anna realized she must have come home early. Susan had likely dropped her off, and she hadn't noticed in the middle of the conversation. I thought you were staying at school until 4, Anna said. Emma looked down at her shoes. We got out early. Teacher had to leave. Anna swallowed. How long have you been home? Emma's eyes lifted. Long enough. Her father stood up. Emma, sweetheart, it's good to see you. But Emma stepped back. Did you come for Daddy's money? The room froze. Her mother gasped, covering her mouth. Her father looked like he'd been slapped. Anna stood moving slowly toward her daughter. Emma. Emma's voice trembled now, but it didn't waver. Is that why they're here? Because Daddy died, and they want what he left for us? Tears stung Anna's eyes. She knelt beside her daughter and pulled her close. No one's taking anything from you, not ever. I heard Grandpa. 50%. That's half. That's not fair. No, it's not, Anna said gently. And we're not giving them anything. Emma leaned her head against Anna's shoulder. After a long pause, Anna looked up at her parents. You need to leave. Her mother looked stunned. Anna, I asked you to leave, she repeated, voice even. I don't want Emma exposed to this, and frankly, I don't want to be either. We are your family, her father said sharply. No, Anna said quietly. Michael was my family. Ethan? Susan? People who show up. You don't get to trade biology for entitlement. Her parents left without another word. Anna held Emma long after the door closed. From the mouths of children, the truth doesn't just land, it pierces. The day after her parents left, Anna sat across from Daniel in his downtown office. The same office where she and Michael had once signed the final draft of their wills, half joking about how morbid it felt. Now it didn't feel morbid, it felt like armor. Daniel was calm as always, his tailored suit crisp, his glasses perched on the bridge of his nose. He didn't ask small-talk questions. He knew better. I need to know if they can touch anything, Anna said. He nodded and flipped open the folder in front of him. Michael's life insurance policy lists you as the sole beneficiary, he began. The retirement accounts were rolled over into your name automatically per the surviving spouse clause. And Emma's college trust, he gave a small smile, also intact. It's set up as an education-specific, irrevocable trust. The only authorized parties are you and a trustee Michael designated his friend from the firm Allen Foster. Anna exhaled slowly, pressing a hand against her chest. What about contesting the will? Can they try? They can try, Daniel said. But the will is airtight, signed, witnessed, and reinforced by a living trust. Unless they can prove coercion or mental incompetence, which based on Michael's clarity and planning, they'll never win. Anna sat back. For the first time in days, she felt something close to solid ground beneath her. They asked for 65%, she said quietly. 50 for themselves, 15 for Jessica. Daniel blinked. That's bold. She laughed bitterly. That's my family. He leaned forward. Anna, you're under no legal obligation to give them a dime, and frankly, I'd advise against it. If you give them anything, they'll see it as an invitation to come back for more. She nodded slowly. When she got home that afternoon, the house felt oddly still. Emma was in her room, colored pencils scattered across her floor, her brow furrowed in concentration. What are you working on? Anna asked, leaning against the doorframe. Emma quickly flipped her sketchbook closed. Nothing yet, she said. It's a surprise. For who? She hesitated. For Grandma and Grandpa. Anna raised an eyebrow. Really? Emma shrugged. Sort of. It's a secret. I'm not done yet. Anna thought about pressing, but decided against it. Something in Emma's tone told her this wasn't a drawing of flowers or fairy tale castles. It was something else. Later that evening, Anna returned to the home office, Michael's space, mostly untouched since the funeral. She had avoided it, but now the avoidance felt like letting something important go to dust. She pulled open the drawer where Michael kept his paperwork files, meticulously labeled, tabs perfectly aligned. She smiled to herself. He had always teased her for her messy notebooks. "One of us has to be the organized one," he used to say. As she sifted through insurance documents and statements, she noticed a plain white envelope tucked behind a folder labeled Trust. Her name was written on the front in Michael's handwriting. Heart pounding, she opened it with trembling fingers. "My dearest Anna, if you're reading this, then the worst has happened. I didn't want to scare you, but my last physical came with a few quiet warnings. Nothing urgent, the doctor said, but enough for me to make some adjustments just in case. Everything's in place. The insurance, the trust for Emma, and enough to keep you safe for a long time. But this is the part that matters most: protect Emma. Not just her heart, but her future. Keep your parents out of her financial life. Your father approached me twice under the guise of investment ideas. They were thinly disguised asks for money. I declined politely, but firmly. And I never told you. I wanted to spare you that. But now if they try again, don't let guilt convince you. You don't owe them anything, not at the cost of Emma's future. Live, be strong, love that girl like we both know how, and remind her every day that she was and still is her daddy's whole world. All my love." Anna sat still, letter clutched to her chest, tears sliding down her cheeks. He had known. Not just about the heart condition, about her parents, about what they were capable of. And even in his final preparations, he had shielded her, spared her the ugliness so she could focus on love. She folded the letter carefully and tucked it into the drawer labeled Personal, not hidden, not on display, just where it belonged. Later that night, after Emma fell asleep, Anna peeked into her daughter's room. The sketchbook was on her desk cover, slightly ajar. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. Whatever Emma was making, it wasn't a peace offering. It was a message. Michael had once told her, "She sees everything, more than she lets on." Now, Anna understood exactly what he meant. In the quiet of that night, Anna didn't rage. She didn't scream or call anyone. She simply sat down at her own desk and began making her own list. What was protected? What needed to be locked down further? A new password for the financial account. A second safe deposit box. Copies for Daniel. She would not meet manipulation with chaos. She would meet it with structure. The quiet kind of revenge. The kind that works because it lasts. Anna didn't want to go. Everything inside her bristled at the idea of stepping foot inside her childhood home, especially now knowing it had become a stage for manipulation rather than refuge. But she also knew avoidance wasn't strength. And this time, she wasn't going to be cornered. She was going to walk in with her eyes open and her armor on. Her father had left a voicemail 2 days earlier. "We'd like to have a family meeting. Sunday afternoon, 2 o'clock. Everyone will be there. Bring Emma." It sounded more like a summons than an invitation. "Do we have to go?" Emma had asked quietly over dinner, pushing peas across her plate. "I think we should," Anna replied. "Sometimes it's important to face difficult things directly." Emma nodded, but said nothing more. That night, she spent hours in her room, hunched over her desk, pencils and markers scattered like a storm. When Anna peeked in, Emma quickly closed her folder. "It's for Sunday," she said. "You'll see." Now, as Anna pulled into her parents' suburban driveway, she took a long, steadying breath. Emma sat beside her, quiet, but composed, a manila envelope clutched tightly in her lap. "Are you ready?" Anna asked. Emma nodded. "Don't worry, Mom. I am." The doors swung open before they could knock. Anna, her mother said, voice carefully constructed with politeness. "Emma, come in." The living room had been staged with intention. Her father sat in his leather recliner like a judge presiding over court. Jessica lounged on the arm of the sofa, phone in hand. Around the room sat Uncle James, Aunt Rita, and their cousin Terry and his wife Barbara, all relatives who had taken time off to attend a funeral, late leave early, and say very little. "Thank you for coming," her father said like a man beginning a board meeting. "We have some important matters to discuss." Anna remained standing. Emma stood beside her. "Whatever you have to say," Anna said calmly, "you can say in front of my daughter. If it's not appropriate for her to hear, it's not appropriate to be said at all." Her mother bristled. "Anna, really, this is adult business. Emma's already lived through losing her father." Anna replied evenly, "She can handle this." Her father sighed. "Fine." He pulled a typed document from a folder and began reading aloud, cold, precise, and deeply rehearsed. "We believe that given our support of you over the years, your college tuition assistance with your first home, and considering the windfall from Michael's insurance policy, a fair distribution of that money is in order." He passed her the paper. "We're suggesting a 50% share for your mother and me, an additional 15% for Jessica to get back on her feet. This ensures everyone in the family benefits from Michael's legacy." Anna scanned the document. It included numbers, large ones. How had they gotten the exact insurance total? Jessica smirked slightly, still scrolling. "Where did you get this number?" Anna asked. Her father looked at Uncle James. "James works in insurance. He helped us estimate based on standard policies and Michael's salary range." Anna's stomach twisted. She didn't respond. Instead, she turned to Emma, who was watching carefully, her envelope still tucked under one arm. "Sweetheart," Anna said, voice soft, "did you want to share what you brought?" Emma nodded. She stepped forward slowly, her small hands reaching into the envelope. "I made this," she said, holding up a single sheet of paper. "It's a bill. For Grandma and Grandpa." The adults looked confused. Jessica actually laughed under her breath. Emma ignored them. She cleared her throat and began reading aloud. "Invoice for real love and support. Hugging my mom when she cried, $0 not provided. Asking me if I was okay, $0 not provided. Coming when my dad died, $0 not provided. Being real grandparents, priceless but never delivered." She paused, then added, "Total due $0. That's what you earned." The room fell utterly silent. Her mother's face had lost all color. Her father stared at the paper, blinking slowly. Jessica had finally put down her phone. "I know you came for Daddy's money," Emma said quietly, "but this is all I have for you." She walked over and handed the page to her grandfather, then returned to her mother's side. Anna rested her hand gently on her daughter's shoulder, her voice steady but unshaking. "You talk about fairness, about what you deserve. But you weren't there when we needed you. You prioritized a birthday party over a funeral. You treated my grief like an inconvenience. And now you're treating Michael's death like a lottery ticket." Her father opened his mouth, but Anna raised her hand. "No, you don't get to speak now." She turned to the room. "To everyone here who sat in silence while this was arranged, do you think this is what Michael would have wanted? For the people who showed up late, who offered no help, who asked for money before asking if we were okay to divide what little piece he left us?" Her Aunt Barbara looked down, visibly ashamed. Uncle Terry shifted uncomfortably. Anna held Emma close. "Michael didn't leave that money for all of you. He left it for us. And Emma, is his legacy not your retirement fund?" She turned back to her parents. "You want respect, but respect is earned, and you've earned none." Her father stood abruptly. "We are your parents." "No," Anna said. "Your people I used to think were family, but family shows up. Family asks how you are. Family puts love first." She turned to Emma. "Are you ready to go, honey?" Emma nodded, and together they walked out, not in anger, but in clarity. The silence after the confrontation lasted exactly 48 hours. Then the messages began. First, a flurry of texts, some cold, some pleading, some dressed up as concern. From her father, "We need to discuss this like adults. This isn't over." From her mother, Anna, "I raised you better than this. Family comes first." Even Jessica chimed in, "Wow. You've always been selfish, but this is low. Mom and Dad deserve better." Anna didn't respond. She didn't need to. Instead, she blocked all 3 numbers, set her email filters to auto-archive anything from their addresses, and gave Susan permission to handle any unexpected visitors at the door. Then she called Daniel. "They're threatening legal action," she told him, voice clipped. Daniel didn't even flinch. "Let them. They said they might contest the will, accuse me of hiding assets." He sighed. "Anna, I've reviewed every detail of Michael's estate plan. The trust is sealed. The will is uncontestable. They don't have a legal leg to stand on." She exhaled slowly. "They're banking on your fear," he added gently. "Don't give them the satisfaction. You're doing exactly what Michael wanted." That evening, Anna found Emma curled up on the couch, rereading one of her dad's old science books. Her fingers traced the underlined words he'd marked in pencil. "We're okay?" Anna said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's cheek. Emma nodded. "I know." Later that week, Marcus arrived. Michael's younger brother had taken emergency leave from his teaching job in Japan and now stood at Anna's front door with nothing but a suitcase and a tired smile. "You didn't have to," she started. "I promised him," Marcus said, "and I want to." He stayed in the guest room but quickly became part of the rhythm of their home. He cooked dinner twice a week, helped Emma with homework, and taught her chess, just as Michael had planned to do. "Dad said you always beat him," Emma teased one evening, eyes lit with playful fire. He said that Marcus laughed. Well, he wasn't wrong. They spent hours at the kitchen table, Emma learning to anticipate moves, to think 2 steps ahead, lessons that bled naturally into life itself. Anna watched from the doorway, sometimes marveling at the way Marcus carried his brother's quiet confidence. It was in his posture, the tilt of his smile, the way he listened more than he spoke. But it wasn't just Michael's shadow Marcus brought into the house. It was presence. It was warmth. It was healing. One afternoon, Anna walked into the living room to find Emma and Marcus flipping through old photo albums. They were laughing real, belly-deep laughter at a picture of Michael in a ridiculous Halloween costume. A slice of pepperoni pizza, complete with felt olives. "I can't believe he wore this to work." Marcus chuckled. He said his boss didn't even blink. Emma grinned. It was the first time Anna had heard her daughter laugh like that in weeks. That night, as they stood at the sink washing dishes, Marcus turned to Anna. "I know you've lost a lot lately," he said, "but not everything's gone." She nodded. "I know, it just feels that way sometimes." He was quiet for a moment. "They're not all bad," she said suddenly. "My family. Or at least I didn't think they were. Believing the best in people isn't weakness," he said. "But protecting your daughter from the worst of them, that's strength." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her silence said everything. And in that silence, she felt something shift. The line had been drawn, not in anger, not in hatred, but in clarity. Her parents had mistaken proximity for entitlement. They believed biology bought them access. But Anna now understood love wasn't inherited, it was proven. And Marcus had proven it every day since he arrived. That weekend, Emma invited Marcus to a school event, a small art showcase she'd almost dropped out of after Michael died. But now, she stood proudly beside her watercolor painting of a lake scene. "That's where Daddy took me fishing," she said to her teacher. And beside her stood Marcus, hands in his pockets, quietly beaming like a lighthouse. That night, Emma slipped into Anna's bed, a ritual they hadn't fully let go of since Michael passed. "I like Uncle Marcus being here," she said softly. "I do too," Anna replied. "Do you think Daddy can see us?" "I think so." There was a pause. "I think he's happy we're okay," Emma whispered. Anna pulled her close, holding her daughter the way Michael used to hold her, safe, warm, steady. "We're going to be okay," she whispered back. And for the first time since the world unraveled, she believed it. The letter came in a plain envelope. No dramatic handwriting, no monogrammed seal, just a few carefully chosen words on simple stationery and a modest package wrapped in brown paper with a ribbon. It was addressed to Emma. Inside the package, a hardcover astronomy book. Not glittery, not pink, not dripping in princess stickers. Just stars, planets, constellations, things Emma actually loved. things her grandparents had never once paid attention to before. The letter attached wasn't long. Dear Anna and Emma, we've spent the last few months thinking, really, thinking about what we said, what we did, and what we didn't do when it mattered most. We know words alone are not enough. We aren't asking to fix everything, but if it's possible, we'd like to see Emma, just for a few minutes, in a public place, with you there. No expectations, no pressure. Anna read it twice, then she showed it to Marcus. He raised an eyebrow. That's surprisingly measured. I know. They didn't mention money. Not once. He leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. How do you feel? I don't know yet, she said honestly. I don't trust it. But Emma's the one who said we should leave the door cracked. Not wide open, just not locked forever. So Anna asked her, would you be open to seeing them? She said gently, one evening over dinner. Emma shrugged, picking at her mashed potatoes. Maybe, if it's somewhere safe, and if they're not weird. Anna smiled. Weird is a given. They settled on 15 minutes. In public. A brightly lit ice cream shop with wide windows and other families bustling about. It wasn't reconciliation. It was a test. Anna chose a booth near the back but close enough to the exit. Emma wore her favorite hoodie and clutched her science book like a shield. Her parents arrived right on time. Her mother wore a pale blue cardigan and avoided lipstick for once. Her father's face was shaved, his hair neatly combed, and he looked older. Not frailer exactly, but smaller somehow. Like the last few months had peeled back layers they hadn't known how to protect. They sat down slowly. No hugs, no false cheer. Just a quiet, careful start. Hi, Emma, her mother said. We saw that book and thought of you. Emma gave a small nod. Thanks. I like space stuff. We remembered her father added, and for once didn't immediately follow it with a story about himself. The next few minutes passed in gentle conversation. They asked what she liked in school, if she still played soccer, if her favorite flavor was still mint chip. It was. Anna watched every word, every gesture, waiting for the shoe to drop for the phrase, the look, the subtle pivot to money. But it never came. They didn't ask about Michael's estate. They didn't mention Jessica. They didn't bring up how hurt they had felt. They asked about Emma, and for the first time in a long time, they actually listened. Emma was quiet, but not withdrawn. When the ice cream arrived, she took a few bites, then pushed her cup forward half-finished. I'm full, she said. Her mother looked over. Want to go? Emma nodded. Anna stood placing a hand on her daughter's back. Thank you, her father said, rising awkwardly, for letting us see her. Anna met his eyes. This isn't forgiveness, she said. It's space. A beginning, maybe, but only if you continue to respect it. We understand, her mother said. As they left the shop, Emma stayed silent until they reached the car. Was that okay? Anna asked, buckling her in. Emma looked out the window, then shrugged. They were better. Yeah, Anna said softly. They were. A few moments passed. I'm glad we went, Emma said at last. Even if it doesn't change anything, it was lighter. Anna didn't respond at first. She simply looked ahead at the red light blinking on the horizon. Sometimes she said finally, we forgive not because they deserve it, but because we do. Emma turned to look at her. We deserve to stop carrying the weight. That doesn't mean forgetting or trusting too fast. It just means letting go of the part that hurts us most. Emma nodded slowly, thoughtful in that way Michael used to be. Yeah? Like putting down a backpack? Anna smiled. Exactly. They drove the rest of the way home in quiet, the kind that didn't feel tense or unfinished. Just still. Settled. That night, Marcus asked how it went. They didn't mess it up, Anna said simply. That's a start. He nodded. And for the first time since Michael's death, Anna allowed herself to believe that healing, real healing, wasn't always loud or cinematic. Sometimes it started with a child's cautious yes, and 15 minutes over melting mint chip. The foundation started with a single notebook. Anna had found it buried beneath a stack of old bills in Michael's home office. It was filled with scribbles, budget charts, sticky notes, and lesson plans labeled Financial Literacy 101 for Real Humans. At the top of one page, he had written, "Everyone deserves to understand money without shame." She sat on the floor for hours flipping through each page, tears gathering not from grief this time, but from a fierce, sudden sense of clarity. This, she realized, was how he could live on. 2 months later, she launched the Michael Blake Foundation for Financial Empowerment. Its mission offer free workshops to single parents, high school seniors, and low-income families, anyone who had been left behind by jargon and generational silence. Anna used her skills from architecture project planning, budgeting, organizing, to build something Michael would have been proud of. She hired a small staff, partnered with a local community center, and began teaching some of the classes herself. Each session opened with a photo of Michael grinning beside a whiteboard covered in colorful graphs. She didn't tell Emma everything at first, only that we're helping people the way Daddy wanted. But one afternoon, Emma came home from school clutching a hand-drawn flyer. "Ms. Parker says there's a money class for families," she said. "Your name was on the paper?" Anna smiled. "It's from the foundation." Emma beamed. "You're teaching grown-ups trying to." Emma nodded solemnly. "Daddy would like that." That weekend, Anna walked past her daughter's room and paused. Emma was sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by scraps of construction paper, printed photos, old ticket stubs, and notes in Michael's handwriting. The air smelled like glue and childhood. "What are you working on?" Anna asked gently. Emma looked up. "It's my memory book. For Dad." She held up the cover. "Memories with Daddy." Inside were pages of colored paper with captions in crayon. "The time we saw fireworks and Dad covered my ears. The pancakes that looked like elephants but tasted like love. That day he taught me to ride a bike and ran next to me until I didn't need him to." Anna sat beside her, blinking back tears. "I love this," she whispered. Emma pressed a glitter sticker to one corner and grinned. "I want to remember the good stuff, not just the sad." Anna kissed the top of her head. "Me too." Across town, Marcus stood outside the gates of the local university. He had turned down 3 international offers. His old job in Osaka had even offered to match his salary if he returned. But he'd said no. Michael had made him promise, "If anything ever happens to me, take care of them. Don't disappear into another country. Be here." Now Marcus had accepted a professorship in the linguistics department just 10 minutes from Anna and Emma's home. The first time he told Emma, she'd squealed and jumped into his arms. Forever, she'd asked. Maybe not forever, he'd replied, but definitely for a while. Anna wasn't sure how to describe what that meant to her, how it felt to know there was someone close by who didn't need managing, who didn't ask for anything, who just showed up. Grief never truly ends, she'd come to realize. It shifts shape. Some days it feels like sharp glass, other days a low ache beneath your ribs. But then, it becomes something else too. Fuel, direction, purpose. At the Foundation's first anniversary event, Anna stood in front of a modest crowd gathered at the community center. Behind her was a banner Michael believed everyone deserves a financial fresh start. She told the story of his heart, not just the organ that failed, but the love that never did. She spoke about dinosaur pancakes, color-coded calendars, and the way he made even grocery shopping feel like an adventure. And she ended with this: "We couldn't stop the loss, but we could choose the legacy." And Michael's legacy is not just numbers or policies. It's this room, these people, these new beginnings. After the applause, Emma stood beside her, holding up a single page from her memory book. It showed a drawing of the night sky full of stars and one large smiling moon. She had written, "Daddy still shines. We just look up now." Marcus hugged them both. That night, Anna walked through the house, the same one that had once felt hollow, haunted by absence, and now felt alive. Not the same, but full again, reclaimed. She passed Michael's photo on the mantel, framed beside a candle they kept lit. "We're doing okay," she said softly. "You were right. She's stronger than we knew." And so was Anna. She no longer carried grief like a weight pressing her down. She carried it like a compass pointing her back to what mattered most: love, presence, legacy. 3 weeks before Emma's 9th birthday, a letter arrived in the mail. No email, no voicemail, no courier delivery. Just a simple white envelope handwritten in her mother's careful script, postmarked with the same suburban address Anna once called home. She hesitated before opening it. It wasn't the first letter. Over the past year, there had been attempts texts that went nowhere, holiday cards that arrived unsigned, an apology bouquet that wilted before she opened the door. But this one felt different. There was no performance, just words. Dear Anna and Emma, we've spent these past weeks and truthfully this past year trying to understand the pain we caused. We know we failed you both in your loss and long before it. We made selfish choices. We didn't show up when it counted. And then we had the audacity to ask for something instead of offering anything at all. We don't expect forgiveness. We don't expect reunion. We only hope if time softens the wounds that we may be allowed to show you through actions that we want to do better. There's no excuse for the way we handled Michael's death. Only regret. We see now what we refused to see before the cost of absence is heavier than we imagined. With love, Mom and Dad. Anna read it 3 times. There was no mention of money, no defensive posturing, no guilt manipulation, just ownership. She left the letter on the kitchen counter next to the fruit bowl and didn't touch it again for 2 days. Then one evening, as she tucked Emma into bed, her daughter looked up at her with clear, hopeful eyes. Mom. Yes, sweetheart, my birthday's soon, right? Anna smiled. It is, just a few more sleeps. There was a pause. Emma twirled the edge of her bedsheet between her fingers. Do you think we could invite Grandma and Grandpa? Anna blinked. Emma didn't speak again right away. She stared at the ceiling like she was searching for stars. I know they hurt you, she said softly, and me, but they sent me that book about space, and they asked about my school at the ice cream place. They didn't ask about money. Anna sat down at the edge of the bed. You miss them. I miss the idea of them, Emma said, but only if they're different now. Anna nodded slowly, then reached over and took her daughter's hand. I got a letter from them, she said. A real one. And it sounded honest. Like they'd finally stopped trying to win and just started to listen. Emma was quiet again. Then she asked the question that made Anna's breath catch. Do you think Daddy would want them there? Anna thought of Michael, of the way he believed in second chances, but always drew a line when it came to Emma. How he could be kind and unbending in the same breath. I think Anna said carefully, your dad would want you to be surrounded by people who truly see you, who show up, who don't take your heart for granted. She looked into her daughter's eyes. So if they keep showing up for the right reasons, if they prove they're different, then maybe… Yes. Emma nodded. I want to give them a chance, she said, but not all the chances. Anna smiled, feeling the strength of that little girl who had once stood in a room full of adults and handed her grandfather a bill for love never given. 2 weeks later, they met at the same ice cream shop. Short visit, no gifts, no expectations. Her parents came with no demands, no passive-aggressive remarks, just a quiet birthday card with a message that didn't mention the past, only the present. Emma read it, then said, thank you, without being prompted. The birthday party was held in the backyard just like Michael would have done it. There were grilled cheese sandwiches shaped like stars, a telescope station, and a scavenger hunt for alien rocks. Marcus manned the BBQ. Susan brought her famous lemon bars, and Emma wore a dress covered in constellations. Her grandparents stayed for the agreed 30 minutes. They helped Emma set up her telescope and asked questions about the planets she loved. When it was time to go, they hugged her gently and said goodbye without lingering. No fanfare, no overstepping, just presence. That night, Anna sat on the porch steps with Marcus, watching the stars blink awake. She's so much like him, Marcus said. She really is. Emma stepped out a few minutes later, barefoot, clutching a mug of cocoa. She climbed into Anna's lap, long legs now stretching farther than they used to, and looked up at the sky. I think today was good, she said. It was. Grandma and Grandpa didn't act fake. No, Anna agreed. They didn't. Emma sipped her cocoa, then looked up with a quiet certainty far beyond her years. Daddy always said I should be kind, but not let people take advantage. Anna kissed the top of her daughter's head. He was right. And in that stillness, surrounded by the people who had chosen to stay, chosen to grow, Anna felt something unexpected settle in her chest. Not just peace, but pride. Because she had built something from the ashes. Not the family she was born into, but the one she chose to nurture. One built not on obligation, but on presence, on boundaries, on real love. Family, she now knew, wasn't about shared blood or last names. It was about who shows up when your world falls apart, and who stays long enough to help you rebuild it.